society will always be as a drunken of the wine. Controlling all the senses for understanding great divine. I will send fire to this land.
All right, shalom, shalom. This is your brother Gabar. This is IAMFITPodcast, the Men Going God's Way edition. Can you guys hear me? Brother Ricky, can you hear me loud and clear?
Loud and clear.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for allowing us to get into your living room. We are here, we're live, and we're going to go into a conversation about the Shabbat today. You know, it was a question sent to me, and I felt, you know what, this would be a good lesson, a good conversation in regard of the Shabbat. And how we doing, Brother Ricky? How's everything in your neck of the woods? I see you still building stuff in the backyard there.
Yeah, I'm about to build over here, trying to make it happen.
So I'm glad you're doing good there in Florida. Was it snowing I saw some video that was snowing in Florida. Is that true?
Yeah, it was. If I'm not mistaken, some people in Orlando got a little snow, but I know up in Jacksonville, Lake City area, Tallahassee, Pensacola, I think they say got 10 inches of snow.
Okay, is that? I'm assuming that's not normal, right? That it doesn't snow every year, every winter in Florida, right? It gets cold, but it doesn't snow. It's every so often, correct? Okay.
I mean, Florida typically don't get snow at all, but you know.
Okay. Yeah. So times are changing, and look, we gotta look for these signs because Christ told us to look for these signs. So I just want to shalom to those that are listening. I see Sister Kathleen; she's always listening. Shalom. Lion W, shalom. Shabbat shalom. Sister Tio, shalom. How you pronounce that name?
That's Toy McCormick.
Toy McCormick. Shalom, sister. I got your email, and we're going to be doing a lesson about your question today, which I'm going to read just part of it because I think it's going to be edifying for the rest of the folks. Daughter of Zion, shalom. A lot of sisters here today. Okay, shalom, loud and clear. Thank you for allowing us to come into your living room for a few hours, God willing. Maybe we could edify some of you guys. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so we could help the algorithm. So let's get to it. So this is the question which I thought it was a profound question, and it was a question that I believe we could all learn from it. Right? Let me see here because my thing is there we go. So the question was, the sister who sent me the email to the Toei, she said, "Could you please explain the encompass the meaning of work in term of no work on the Sabbath? If you could please elaborate on the different scriptures and how it applies to us today versus back in biblical time." So that's a very good question, sister, and I wanted to kind of expound upon it because I think is a question that some people may have, right? We may take for granted, some of us that been keeping Sabbath for a long time, been reading the teachings on the Sabbath, and we assume that everybody has done the same, but not all the time. So sometimes it's good to rehearse these commandments and to introduce it to new people that are now coming into the walk, right? So let's just start, right? And it's important for us to start from the beginning, so to speak, right? Most people understand that in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, towards the end of the chapter, is when God rested in hollow the seventh day, right? So we're going to go into some of the scriptures to try to establish the foundation of the Sabbath, right? We're going to go into what the law says directly from God Himself, what how evolve from the rabbinical perspective, right? And then what the final word, which is Christ, what He said about the Sabbath, right? So we're going to start in Genesis chapter 2, verse 1. And Brother Ricky, if you could start reading that, and we could start from here, and then we'll bounce from different places.
The creation of man and woman, Genesis 2 and 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God ended His work which He made, and He rested on the seventh day from all His work which He had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because therein He had rested from all His work which God created and made. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens.
And people sometimes may ask that the history of Genesis in chapter 1 is different from the history of Genesis in chapter 2, because in Genesis chapter 1, Adam was formed on the sixth day. And then when you go into Genesis chapter 2, it gives you the impression like Adam is being formed after the seventh day, right? But when you read the scripture, it says, these are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created. So now they're going back on and giving you a greater detail on the sixth day when Adam was created. He's giving you more detail. In the day that God, the Lord God, made the earth and the heavens, right? And He planted the garden. So they're going back on creation, giving more details. So this is not a continuation. This is a more going back and giving you more detail on when man was created. If somebody may ask you, right? So let me go here real quick, because I want to go back to the first time that the book or the concept of the Sabbath was mentioned, right? So let's just say, for instance, when you go here, right? Let me just go into the Strong's real quick, because when you go into the Strong's, it gives you the first time the Sabbath was mentioned, right? The Sabbath. So the Sabbath is H7676, right? That's the Sabbath, right? And you may have different. Let me see here. Yeah. So when you look at the term Sabbath, the first time that it was mentioned, it was in Exodus chapter 16, verse 23. So the reason why I believe that the Sabbath was being kept all along, or at least during this time, the Israelite already knew about the Sabbath, because the first time it's mentioned is just saying, remember the Sabbath. And the first time it's mentioned is actually not even the Sabbath, is not the central point of this story in Exodus 16. It actually was talking about manna that was coming down from heaven. It was feeding Israel, and Israel went out on the Sabbath to gather manna, and God told them not to do that, right? It's like an afterthought. So this shows me that the Jews knew about the Sabbath coming out of Egypt. They were probably not keeping the Sabbath, right? But when you look at the struggle between Moses and Pharaoh, the first thing that he wanted us to do is to rest. And he said, let us keep a feast unto the Lord. And then it wasn't that he wanted Israel to be free at the beginning, is that they wanted to be allowed to keep their feast days and their Sabbaths. And then that was the argument back and forth. But that's a different story altogether. So let's go into the book of Exodus, chapter 16. And we're gonna pick it up at verse 22, if you don't mind, brother Ricky.
Exodus 16 and 22. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, this is that which the Lord has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which ye will bake today, and seeth that ye will seeth, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning.
This is talking about, this is a tradition, and I'm gonna maybe I think up to, let me see if it gather, because the word not the word preparation, but prepare was mentioned here formally. I just gotta see where it's probably gonna read it according. It's probably gonna, the word's gonna come up maybe later. No, I'd read it somewhere. I'm trying to find it, but it will come up. Okay, so this is the origin in preparing for the Sabbath. This is a good example, or where you will go biblically, where the tradition of Friday being the day of preparation, because there was no work on the Sabbath. Now, when you look at the term no work, any work, right? Let me tell you okay. Well, let me finish reading this, and then I'll explain, because I don't want to jump around all over the place. But this is where the origin of the prepare on the Friday afternoon before the sun goes down. You got to prepare what you're going to eat the day before, of that evening, the day after, so forth, so on, in the morning. And this is why when you look at many Jews throughout the world, and this is talking about even the Ethiopian Jews, the Jews from Africa, Europe, whatever, those that are following the religion, they stop working early Friday. Friday is really a half a day. They'll start working around 2:00, sometimes around 1:00, because they have to go home, prepare what they're going to eat that night, and also prepare what they're going to eat the night before, the night after, excuse me. Right? So that's where that term preparation day came from, because there's no working on in the Sabbath. So, and we're going to go into more in depth in regards of that, right? So let's continue reading.
16 and 24. And they laid it up till the morning, as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein. And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for that the Lord has given you the Sabbath, therefore he giveth you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day.
So what happened is, and this is also a statement of controversy. So it says, see, for the Lord that God has given you the Sabbath, therefore he gives you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. So some people argue that now you are not allowed to leave your household for any other reason outside of to worship, to go to the temple. And then and within Jewish tradition, they used to call, in regards to how long you could travel, how far you could travel, they used to call it a Sabbath day journey. Like in the book of Acts mentioned, Acts 1. And a Sabbath day journey is, I believe, 200 cubits or 200, it's about a quarter of a mile, I think it was, or it is. And that's how long you're allowed to walk. So modern Jews today would have synagogues around a certain amount of blocks. So then every Jewish person could go and walk to the synagogue, but don't go beyond what is allotted to walk on the Sabbath day, right? And these traditions were made by men, but we're going to go into these traditions, that these traditions was not necessarily all bad or wrong, but it became the traditions of man. Okay, let me backtrack. You got the written law. The oral laws was a tradition or the interpretation how to keep the written law. The oral law became, the oral law is not as important, or not important. Let me get another word. It's not as unchangeable. The oral traditions could change depending on the circumstance that you in. So let me explain what I'm saying. If you're a Jew in first century Judea and you find yourself in a scenario in regards of violating the Sabbath or violating a Torah law, and you don't know how to deal with this particular situation, you will go to a rabbi. A rabbi would give you his thought or his oral interpretation. That oral interpretation will become law. So if a new person comes in and asks the rabbi the same question, 3 years from now or 5 years from now, they will go back to that question that was asked 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what have you, and then that interpretation becomes the law. Or that interpretation becomes the interpretation of that law. I hope I'm making sense. Right? And that was okay. That was ordained by God. And we're going to go into that. The problem is that they begin to abuse it, and it became a scenario that they became hypocrites, right? So let's go. Let's see here. So what you cannot do on the Sabbath, right? Let's go here to Exodus 35, right? Let's go to Exodus 35 and let's start at Moses and the congregation together, and on these two words, and commanded that they should. Okay, start at verse 2, if you don't mind, brother.
Exodus 35:2. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day there shall be to you an holy day, a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death. Ye shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day.
So we're going to go into kindling a fire, right? What that means. So you was not allowed to start a fire on the Sabbath. So how our forefathers used to deal with this problem, right? They used to start the fire, make sure they start the fire on Friday, make sure that fire keeps going. The fire stays on, and we just keep it on throughout the entire day, right? So you start let's just say you start 6 o'clock on Friday, and then Saturday morning the fire is still on because you made sure that you kept it on, and then you just throw in, not kindle, but you just keep it going with the wood and or chalk or whatever you may be using to continue the fire go forward. So therefore, there's no kindling, right, on fire. So So we're just going over all the commandments and what God directly told us in the Torah, right? So we do know there's no work. And we're going to see, what does that mean, no work? Because when you go, like, for instance, let's go to Leviticus chapter 23, right? These are the feast days, right? Now you notice, let's start at verse 20. Let's start at verse 2. Verse 2.
Leviticus 23:2. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feast.
Now, the weekly Sabbath is not only a day that you rest, but it's also a feast, because the introduction of this particular paragraph or chapter is, this is how you celebrate my feast days, showing you that the weekly Sabbath is a feast day, right? It's a celebration, right? So it's a day of rest, but it's a day of remembrance when God created the earth, right, and the heavens, right? So let's continue reading.
6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings.
Now, there are 2 feast days that the term no work is mentioned. That is the weekly Sabbath and the Day of Atonement. All other feast days, it says no servile work. Notice if you know the difference. Let's pick it up. Let's keep reading.
Leviticus 23:4. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the month, at even, is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have an holy convocation, ye shall do no servile work therein.
See, servile work, it didn't say no work, right? And it says, when you keep reading, go down to verse just offering to them down. Go down and let's read. So they should. Okay, go down to verse 21.
Leviticus 23:21. And ye shall proclaim on the self same day, that it may be a holy convocation unto you. Ye shall do no servile work therein. It shall be a statute forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations.
So notice it's saying servile work. It only says no work on the Sabbath, but all the other feasts it says no servile work therein, right? Let's go down to verse 24.
Leviticus 23:24. Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, a memorial of blowing of trumpets, and holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord.
So when you go down to the book, into the feast, or not, it's not a feast, is if the Day of Atonement, this is what it says about that day. Let's read. Start at verse 27.
Leviticus 23:27. Also, on the 10th day of the 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. It shall be an holy convocation unto you, and ye shall afflict your souls and offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And ye shall do no work in that same day.
You notice that? You notice that? It says you should do no work, not you should do no servile work. So the Day of Atonement and the weekly Passover was like a there is because there's no reason for you to work on the Sabbath because you prepare all the work that you need to do on the sixth day. So there's no work you need to do. So everything that you did in regards of the feet of that feast day, of that day, that what you're preparing for that day and so forth, so on, was already done on the sixth day. You do no work. Well, we're going to go into the work you could do. That's in the book of Jubilee. But to show you that the book of the weekly Sabbath and the Day of Atonement, they are unique because these are the only two Sabbath or feast days that it says no work versus servile work. Because servile work means work for hire, your job, what you do to make a living. You're not allowed to do that. But you're allowed to work because you're preparing for the feast, right? Similar to what we did when we were in the world, right? We have to get ready. Thanksgiving come, we have to get the turkey. Christmas, we got to get the tree. We're not going to work that day. We take off. It's a federal holiday, right? So we were running around preparing for the feast, similar to the feast days. But the Sabbath is the only feast day that you do all the preparation on the sixth day. I hope I'm making sense. But on the feast days, you're working, but you're not working for hire. You're working for the feast days, whatever that may be. Right?
Right.
So that's the only difference, right? So let's go to Numbers 15:32.
Numbers 15 and 32. And while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath day. And they found him gathering sticks, brought him unto Moses and Aaron, and unto all the congregation. And they put him in ward, because it was not declared what should be done to him.
So they put him in prison because they wasn't sure there was not a law yet to show you that the law was being developed. So God was giving Moses, this is what you should do. And then somebody has broke that law and said, okay, God, somebody broke the law, what we should do then, right? So it was a thing that was added because of transgression, as the book of Galatians says, right? Keep reading.
Right. And the Lord said unto Moses, the man shall be surely put to death. All the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp.
Mm-hmm.
And all the congregation brought him without the camp and stoned him with stones, and he died, as the Lord commanded Moses.
And this is interesting because I don't know if the book of Numbers is giving you the cause and effect of the fringes, because right after that, it says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and bind them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garments throughout their generation, and that they put upon the fringe of the borders a ribbon of blue, and it shall be unto you for a fringe, that ye may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord. So maybe the fringes, the purpose of the fringes, it was because this man got killed because he broke the law of the Sabbath. So God was like, listen, man, right? Because I'm pretty sure that was like a heavy day, right? We got to kill Billy. I like Billy. He's my friend. But you get what I'm saying? That got to be a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
Stone a grown man to death with stones? That's not, a lightly, a thing that it's not going to mess with your head if you experience that, right? You know the guy, you heard of the guy, he seems like a nice guy, and God said, you got to kill this guy. That he had kids, that he had a wife, we don't know. It was serious bitches in the wilderness, right? So right. God, maybe the fringes is like, I gotta do something psychologically to these fools, because I'm gonna keep these fools, I'm gonna keep breaking the law. They have to do something to try to reduce the sin, right? And maybe the fringes was a offshoot or a response of that, right?
Yeah.
So this is basically what the Bible says and things of that nature. Let's go to.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Elder,
Yeah.
the fringes, I think it was supposed to be like a total of 6. Well, I'm not sure if it was that many back then, but
Yeah.
I know at one point it was a total of 614 fringes that represented all the laws, and it's supposed to keep you in remembrance. So when you about to do something that you ain't supposed to do, you
Yeah.
grab it and it's supposed to remind you. So
Not to do it. Right.
right.
Yeah, I have read commentaries on that. The only problem with the 613 laws that says that was put together in about 1,000 years ago, give or take,
Okay.
and they kind of mix laws that are dealing with the Talmud and also the the commandments. So, did you ever read the 613 laws?
I ain't read all of them.
Yeah,
Because to
but
me, if you start going through them and start
yeah,
realizing, well, if I focus on the basic 10, I cover them all. But
right,
because people kept
right,
finding loopholes to do this and do that, then it's like we
right.
had to put tape and band-aids on everything that took place.
Right. So there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of stuff that would never apply to us. Like it's a law if you're in the military. There's a law if you're a Levi. There's a law if you're a woman in pregnancy. If you get what I'm saying. So a lot of if you are a midget or a dwarf, you cannot go into the temple, right? So a
Right.
lot of these things would not apply to the majority of if you're a male, that would eliminate the female laws. If you are not a high priest, that will eliminate all the priestly laws. I think there's like 200 laws just on the priestly laws. So people get confused and thinking that you have to keep these laws every day across your life. That's not, necessarily true. The bind or the problem became is when the rabbi began to add laws, like you got to tie your right shoe before your left shoe. You got to put on everything was like adding to expanding upon the law, right? And that's what became the issue that Christ was discussing, right? So let's go. Let me see here. I also want to go to. Let's go to. Let me find this other spot real quick. Hold on, 2 seconds. Bear with me, guys. 2 seconds. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 17. That's what I'm looking for. I mean Jeremiah. Jeremiah 17. And let's start at the verse 19 verse.
All right. Jeremiah 17 and 19. Thus saith the Lord unto me, go and stand in the gate of the children of the people, whereby the kings of Judah come in, and by which they go out, and in all the gates of Jerusalem. And say unto them, hear ye the word of the Lord, ye kings of Judah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem that enter in by these gates. Thus saith the Lord, take heed to yourselves, and bear no burden on the Sabbath day, nor bring it in by the gates of Jerusalem. Neither carry forth a burden out of your houses on the Sabbath day, neither do ye any work, but hallow ye the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers. But they obey.
So here's Jeremiah condemning Israel because they were, I guess, breaking the law. So this shows that bringing out a burden out your house. What will be a burden out your house? Throwing out your trash will be breaking the law, the Sabbath. Bringing, I have to mail out this letter. Let me take out this letter and mail it out, and so forth, so on. You breaking the law. Let me, throw out this broken furniture I've been meaning to throw out on the Shabbat, and because the truck is going to come tomorrow and so forth, so on. You can't do that. So any errands, any personal errands, any personal business, whether it be working for hire or whether it be dealing with personal life errands is breaking the Sabbath. So that's what Jeremiah was talking about. So try to refrain from any personal errands and so forth, so on, within the Shabbat, because you got 6 days to do that. Cleaning your house, doing your laundry, paying your bills, looking at, window shopping. Hey, I should buy that, even online, things with your own pleasure, your own, I would say, desires outside of the Most High. You got 6 days for that, right? So let's continue reading where we left off.
Fathers, 23rd verse. But they obeyed not, neither inclined their ear, but made their neck stiff, that they might not hear, nor receive instruction.
Mm-hmm.
And it came to pass, if ye diligently hearken unto me, saith the Lord, to bring in no burden through the gates of this city on the Sabbath day, but hallow the Sabbath day to do no work therein. Then shall there enter into the gates of this city kings and princes sitting upon the throne of David, riding in chariots and on horses, they and their princes, the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and this city shall remain forever.
Right.
And they
keep reading. Go ahead.
And they shall come from the cities of Judah, and from the places about Jerusalem, and from the land of Benjamin, and from the plain, and from the mountains, and from the south, bringing burnt offerings and sacrifices and meat offerings and incense, and bringing sacrifices of praise unto the house of the Lord. But if ye will not hearken unto me to hallow the Sabbath day, and not to bear a burden, even entering in at the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day, then will I kindle a fire in the gates thereof, and it shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem, and it shall not be quenched.
And it should not be quenched, right? So this is a history kind of showing you guys. Let's go to the book of Nehemiah, when even Nehemiah was having issues with Israel keeping the Sabbath. This is not new under the sun, right? Let's start at let's see. Let's start at verse 15. Nehemiah 13, right. 15.
Sabbath restored, Nehemiah 13 and 15. In those days saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves, and lading asses, as also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath day unto the children of Judah and Jerusalem. Then I contended with the nobles of Judah, and said unto them, what evil thing is this that ye do, and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath day? And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates, that there should no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers of all kind of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them, and said unto them, why lodge ye about the wall? If ye do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth came they no more on the Sabbath. And I commanded the Levites that they should cleanse themselves, and that they should come and keep the gates, to sanctify the Sabbath day. Remember me, O my God, concerning this also, and spare me according to the greatness of thy mercy.
Right. So this is Nehemiah. There's nothing new in the sun. Israel always was rebellious. And so we're going into the history of Israel rebellious, right? So let's go to Psalms 82, verse 1. We're going to read it. This is a I don't know if this came, I looked at this and there's no evidence that it came by commandment. So this could have been a tradition. This is a Psalms or song for the Sabbath day. So looks like this is something that our forefathers kept as a tradition to read or recite or pray on the Sabbath day, giving God all praises. So let's read this real quick. It's only 15 verses long. So let's read this real quick if you don't mind, brother.
Psalms 92:1, a psalm or song for the Sabbath day. It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High. To shew forth thy loving kindness in the morning and thy faithfulness every night. Upon an instrument of 10 strings and upon the psalmistry, upon the harp with the solemn sound. For thou, Lord, hast made me glad through thy work. I will triumph in the works of thy hands. O Lord, how great are thy works, and thy thoughts are very deep. A brutish man knoweth not, neither doth a fool understand this. When the wicked spring as the grass, and when all the works of iniquity do flourish, it is that they shall be destroyed forever. But thou, Lord, art most high forevermore. For lo, thine enemies, O Lord, for lo, thine enemies shall perish. All the workers of iniquity shall be scattered. But my horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of a unicorn. I shall be anointed with fresh oil. Mine eye also shall see my desire on mine enemies, and mine ears shall hear my desire of the wicked that rise up against me. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be fat and flourishing, to shew that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him.
Amen to that. So these are, I'm just going to go over, and I want to go over to the book of Jubilee, chapter 50. This is a good chapter to the book of Jubilee goes into many things. The book of Jubilee is called the Little Genesis because it kind of just returned the Genesis stories up to the time of Moses, and it's kind of talking from Moses back and then going into creation and Adam and Eve. It goes into Cain and Abel, Noah, the fallen angels, goes into all that history, and then also it touches on the Sabbath. Chapter 49 is good to read because it's going into how to properly keep the feast day of the Passover. And the chapter 50 goes into how to keep the weekly feast day of the Shabbat. So let's read chapter 50, verse 1 of the book of Jubilee.
All right. And after this law, I made known to thee the days of the Sabbath in the desert of Sinai, which is between Elam and Sinai. And I told thee of the Sabbath of the land on Mount Sinai, and I told thee of the Jubilee years and the Sabbath of years, but the year thereof have I not told thee till ye enter the land which ye are to possess. And the land also shall keep its Sabbath, while they dwell upon it, and they shall know the Jubilee year. Wherefore I have ordained for thee the year weeks and years and Jubilees. There are 49 Jubilees from the days of Adam until this day, 2410 AM, which is Anno Mundo, creation of the world. And 1 week and 2 years, and there are yet 40 years to come for learning the 2450 Anno Mundo commandments of the Lord until they pass over into the land of Canaan, crossing the Jordan to the west. And the Jubilees shall pass by until Israel is cleansed from all guilt of fornication and uncleanliness and pollution and sin and errors, and dwells with confidence in all the land. And there shall be no more a Satan or any evil one, and the land shall be clean from that time forevermore. And behold, the commandment regarding the Sabbath, I have written them down for thee, and all the judgments of its laws. 6 days shalt thou labor, but on the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it ye shall do no manner of work, ye and your sons, and your men servants, and your maid servants, and all your cattle, and the sojourners also who is with you. And the man that does any work on it shall die. Whoever desecrates that day, whoever lies with his wife, whoever says he will do something on it, that he will set out on a journey therein in regard to any buying or selling. And whoever draws water therein, which he had not prepared for himself on the 6th day, and whoever takes up any burden to carry it out of his tent or out of his house shall die.
Now, a lot of these commandments were relating to ancient times, because in ancient times, to get water, you have to draw it on the well. We don't need to do that anymore because we got water right in our homes. We could just turn on the faucet. So sometimes the problem is with these commandments is that God was speaking to our people thousands of years ago, different culture, different technology or lack thereof. So a lot of things that were a problem back then are no longer a problem now. The problem sometimes is that people are trying to transform ancient problems into modern problems, or create a universal problem like you should not draw water from the well. Okay, now people are going to say, okay, what's the modern well today? There's the sink, right? If you go to the kitchen, you got your sink and you turn it on. That's the modern well. So you're not allowed to draw water from the well. I don't think that's what God was saying. I believe the spirit of the law was that it takes work to go to the well. You got to go get a bucket, walk, put water on the bucket, put it back, carry it back to your home. You should do that on the 6th day. Now you need to do that. But let's just say that this pricks your spirit. And even if that is not what God was saying directly, and one could argue that the sink, the modern day sink, is the modern day whale, could be. We could argue that. Even if you were you siding with me that is not talking about a modern whale, the modern day sink. But let's say you don't agree with me. That's okay. Take water, like what we do. We have one of those filter what you call those filter glass thing that filters in. It got that thing that you clean the water. We have that in our refrigerator, right? And that's the water I mostly drink. I don't drink from the tap water anyway, right? So if it pricks your spirit, you should not do it. But you should try to find creative ways to work less on the Sabbath. You have 9 time coffee makers. You could program it Friday afternoon to start cooking or start working 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever time you like. So when you are waking up in the morning, washing your face, putting, some clothes on, taking a quick shower, right? And so forth, so on. The coffee is already made, right? You have, you could have cold cuts, and you could, there's different ways. Even today, you got stove that you could program to turn on, the next day. It could start cooking the next day, and so forth, so on. You should prepare everything. So the spirit of this law is try to work as least as possible in your daily scenario, your absolutely like, okay, because the Bible, you're not allowed to, it said you're not allowed to lay with your wife, but it talks about you're not allowed to fast. So you have to eat on the Sabbath, right? And I think also we're gonna go into the book of the Apocrypha, it goes into that, right? So how to associate it today. Look around your house and look at what you have available and create your own tradition to honor the Sabbath. I don't believe the Sabbath should be something that everybody is keeping the same necessarily, but it should be uniformly understood that that day is a day that you don't labor. Try to do as much as labor as possible. So if garbage bothers you, right, or certain things bother you, make sure you clean your house, all through the, Friday afternoon. So by Friday evening, everything is fine, right? Some people will argue, well, Elder, what about if I got soup I'm eating and I dropped in the floor? Do I got to wait before the sun, for you to clean it and things of that nature? There's no law that actually addresses that specifically, right? I'll be comfortable with either way, whatever it is you think is right? And so forth, so on. But we're going to go into different arguments about this law. But you yourself, you try at your own home, at your own environment, try to minimize you doing any work at all, okay? Um, and try to come up with different clever ways where you could do shortcuts in regards of working or necessarily things you need to do, right? And so forth, so on. So I hope I'm answering these questions because if I create or if I have a lesson that is like, you got to do it this way, my brother, you got to do it this way, my sister, and so forth, so on, then I'll become a pharmaceutical, person that now I'm trying to control everybody else's behavior. And I think that's what Christ was trying to tell us in regards of the Sabbath. And we're going to focus also on the New Testament, what did Christ said about the Sabbath as well, right? So let's continue reading. Because there's definitely do's and don'ts, right? You can't have sex, period. And that's easy to keep. You just don't do it, right? You can't go out carrying things out of your house, right? Personal things and things of that nature, and so forth, so on. I know accidents may happen. That's fine. We can't avoid that. But just try your best to avoid those potential laboring things, right? And so forth, so on. It's like there was a thing back in the days. Let me see. Let me go here. Let me go in the New Testament when it talks about the Sabbath. That there was a scenario that there was a fire starting, and then people didn't want to break the Sabbath, and they didn't know. Let me find it. 2 seconds. Let me just find it real quick. Where is this? Which look at the Sabbath? Is it here? Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can find it. 2 seconds. Now, I was reading it earlier. I can't find it. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. Let me see if I have it here. I'm gonna remember how to save these things a little better. Yeah, but it'll come back to me. So basically, the example was that you had Jews there was a fire that was in their house, and they did not want to use the telephone. This was a story in 1992. And by time they got to the rabbi, they asked the rabbi, "What should we do?" It was 2 other houses got burned, and so forth, so on. And the rabbi said, "Yeah, you could call the fire department because it is legal to break the Sabbath or work on the Sabbath to save a life. So we're going to go into that as well, right? So let's go into the New Testament, right? But let's finish reading the book of Jubilee, and we're going to the New Testament.
All right.
And then what Christ said about the Sabbath, where we left off.
Ninth verse. We finished reading the 8th, and we had the 9th.
Okay,
you want me to read the 8th over?
Yeah, you could read the 9th. You could start at the 9th. Got it.
Okay. Ye shall do no work whatever on the Sabbath day, save whatever ye have prepared for yourselves on the 6th day, so as to eat and drink and rest and keep Sabbath from all work on that day, and to bless the Lord your God, who has given you a day of festival and a holy day and a day of the holy kingdom. For all Israel is this day among their days forever.
Exactly. So you are not allowed to work. It says, for ye shall do no work whatsoever on the Sabbath day, save, the word save means except what ye have prepared. That's what the preparation day, the 6th day, for yourself on the 6th day. So as to eat, in regards of to eat, right? So as to eat and drink and rest and keep the Sabbath from all work on that day, right? To bless the Lord, right? So you're allowed to prepare. So yes, if you have a custom within your family to eat a meal, right, and so forth, so on, and from what it's most, if you're gonna keep your Sabbath at home, prepare the table the night before, so so then you don't have to do that work on the Shabbat. Season all your food, take care of all the preparation. So then, if you could just warm it up on the next day, that's what you could just simply do. Some people argue that you cook it on Friday. Other people argue you could cook it on Saturday or the Shabbat. You just got to prepare it, season it, so it could be ready to be cooked. Whatever interpretation you like, I'm cautious with it. If you're not sure, go to the path of most resistance. Cook it and then just warm it up the next day. If you even have a problem with that, warming it up the next day, get some cold cuts and you just eat that, right? Fruits and vegetables and so forth, so on. So all these things determine, especially the man of the house will determine, not the wife will determine that. The man of the house will determine how you want to keep this and so forth, so on. Hey, honey, should we prepare the table before the night before? Okay, no problem. Let the man, but the man, you want to go into the path of most resistance, meaning if you're not sure about something, don't do it until you have found some ancient Hebraic literature that may comment on the subject, and then maybe that will enhance your understanding. That's what I would tell people, right? Let's continue reading.
All right. For great is the honor which the Lord has given to Israel, that they should eat and drink and be satisfied on this festival day, and rest therein from all labor which belongs to the labor of the children of men, save burning frankincense and bringing oblations and sacrifices before the Lord for days and for the Sabbath.
Right. So remember when Jeremiah said you're not allowed to bring any burden outside your house. The only burden that you're allowed to bring outside your house is what your oblations, your gifts, right? And so forth, so on. Back in the days, they used to present gifts to the priests, right? Or your sacrifice you're gonna bring out that day, or your oblation to the Lord, right? So that burden you are allowed to bring out your house. Right, that's where that word "save." Right. Let's continue. Where you left off, brother?
11th verse.
11.
This work alone shall be done on the Sabbath days in the sanctuary of the Lord your God.
Now you notice in the beginning it says these are the work you're allowed to do in your home, and this is the only work you're allowed to bring outside, the only labor you're allowed to bring outside your house. And also it says, rest restore from all your labor, which belongs to the labor of the children of man, save burning frankincense. That's where you get the whole tradition within the Jewish community that they burn the candle, they light the candles on the Seder meal every Friday night. Okay, that's okay. You're allowed to do that, right? How you do it, right? We could go into maybe a lesson on that and think that where that came from, because then we don't want these things to be, if it's not written in the Bible specifically how to do it, then what usually happens, you will go to your priest and your priest will say, okay, this is how we all do it, so we could all be collectively doing the same thing, which is fine. But burning incense in your home, it's okay for you to do, right? Now, how you do it, the master of the house will determine that. That will be the husband, right? If you are a single sister, right, you should then you go to your pastor, right? And he will kind of guide you that way. If you don't have a pastor, like the sister who sent me the email, she said, I'm not part of a church necessarily. She would ask me this question. Then if sisters, if you are single and if you're looking for this show and this program to kind of be your go-to, then that's great. But a woman should always have a male hedge over her in regards of her spiritual walk. You have to just pick a teacher to teach you, right? A male teacher to teach you, right? So let's continue reading.
All right. Still at 11th verse. That they may atone for Israel with sacrifice continually from day to day for a memorial well-pleasing before the Lord, and that he may receive them always from day to day according as thou hast been commanded. Every man who does any work therein, or goes a journey, or tills his farm, whether it in his house or any other place, and whoever lights a fire, or rides on any beast, or travels by ship or sea, and whoever strikes or kills anything, or slaughters a beast or bird, or whoever catches an animal or bird or a fish, or whoever fasts or makes war on the Sabbath. The man who does any of these things on the Sabbath shall die, so that the children of Israel shall observe the Sabbath according to the commandments regarding the Sabbath of the land, as it is written in the tablets, which he had gave into my hands, that I shall write out for thee the laws of the seasons, and the seasons according to the divisions of their days. Herewith is completed the account of the division of the days.
So this is right. So this is basically what the scripture is saying in regards of the Sabbath days in the Old Testament or in the Torah, right? Now we're going to go into the Sabbath or the understanding on the Sabbath in regards of Christ, right? So the first time Christ was criticized by the Pharisees of him breaking the Sabbath or doing something against the Sabbath was in Mark 2nd, the second book of Mark, Matthew 12, and Luke 6. These stories are saying the same stories, but from different eyewitnesses. We're going to start from the book of Mark, then we're going to go to the book of Matthew, and then we're going to end up at the book of Luke. Okay? So to kind of give you a synopsis of what to start. These three stories are the same story. It's just tell from a different eyewitness, right? So let's continue. Let's pick it up at verse 23, chapter 2 of the book of Mark.
And it came to pass that he went through the cornfields on the Sabbath day, and his disciples began, as they went, to pluck the ears of corn. And the Pharisees said unto him, Behold, why do they on the Sabbath day that which is not lawful? And he said unto them, Have ye never read what David did when he had need and was hungered, he and they that were with him? How he went into the house of God in the days of Abiathar the high priest, and did eat the shewbread, which is not lawful to eat but for the priest, and gave also to them which were with him. And he said unto them, The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath.
So the Son of Man is also on the Lord of the Sabbath. So we're going to go into that. And the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath, meaning the Sabbath was there for to serve man, not for man to serve the Sabbath. Right? And what was they were criticizing him? Because he was eating corn on the Sabbath day. His disciples was going plucking corn and eating that day. Now, I want to read there's a reason why he used the story of David, that it was not lawful for him to eat except the priest, right? Now let's go to the book of Matthew's. This version is the same story, but it now is adding more to the story. It's giving us a more clear picture. So let's continue reading.
Matthew 12:1. At that time, Yeshua went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were hungry, and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, Have you not read what David did when he was in hunger, and they were with him? How he entered into the house of God and did eat the shewbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priests.
But only for the priests. That's very important. Is the reason why Christ quoted, or he used the story of David eating the shewbread, right? Because the rabbis did not know the answer of why David ate the shewbread that only the priests were allowed to eat. But the rabbis did not know the answer. That's why they left him alone, and they didn't understand why where he was coming from, because he was trying to tell the Pharisee, I am the high priest. I have the authority to do this in the same way David had the authority to do that, because he was also a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. So what was happening is that Christ was trying to tell them, you're dealing with the high priest. I set the standards in what is allowed to do in the Sabbath and what is not allowed to do in the Sabbath. He's going to explain that. Keep reading verse 5.
Verse 5. Or have you not read in the law how that on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless?
And are blameless. Why did he say that? Why he's always using example of priesthood if Christ was not a priest? He was from the tribe of Judah. He was trying to tell them, you are not dealing with the new order, the Melchizedek order, which is king and priest in one, right? Let's continue reading.
12:6. But I say unto you that in this place is one greater than the temple.
He was talking about himself. He was telling them, I'm the high priest here on earth. And what else he told them?
But if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice. Ye will have not condemned the guiltless.
Ye would not condemn the guiltless, meaning Christ was trying to tell them the old way of keeping a Sabbath is done away with. I'm giving you the new way. So if you will not condemn the guiltless, that means Christ was not saying, no, it's grace. He didn't say, so this was not grace applying here. This is telling the Jews, you are allowed to do this in the Sabbath now. And why were the apostles allowed to do this? Remember, he said, did you remember what David did when he was in hunger? So if you're hungry, you are allowed to go and fetch some food from the field. And the reason why The disciples were allowed to do this because they were part of the new priesthood on earth, and they were doing God's work. Right?
A question.
Yes, sir.
On the 7th verse, was our big brother telling them up front that he was going to sacrifice himself? Because it says, but if he had known what this meant, because he was talking, I will have mercy and not sacrifice. Or am I looking at it differently?
Yeah. It may be. I see what you're saying, because when it says, "But if ye had known what this means," meaning if you will understand what the scriptures are saying, right? I will have mercy and not sacrifice. What is this talking about? Because when it says, "I will have mercy and not sacrifice," meaning that the strict way of the way the law was being kept through the elders was not the purpose of the Sabbath.
Okay. Yeah.
So the traditions that was coming in, you got to do this by this time, you got to do it. If you look at the how the Sabbath is kept within the the Jewish community, which is the good thing about them still keeping these records, is because they took our records of the Pharisees and kept the Pharisaical tradition alive through them. Although they're not the true descendants of the biblical Hebrews, right? But at least they kept the tradition of the Pharisees and so forth, so on. So it shows you how strict they made the Sabbath. Now, they were sitting in Moses' seat. They had the authority to do that as leaders, but they were missing the mark. So he was saying the purpose of the restriction, because even when God was reprimanding Israel, when they went out in the field and ate double, they on the Sabbath to gather the manna, what did God commanded after that? Let everybody stay home. Don't go out on the Sabbath day. Now, was he talking to us, or was he talking to them, those rebellious Israelites, our forefather, that they want to go out on the Sabbath day and gather some manna because they didn't have any faith in God? God said, "I'm going to give you a double portion on the 6th day, so you will have enough for the 7th." They didn't believe him. Let me go out there and see. So then God had to put another commandment and said, "Let everybody stay home." But he wasn't really talking to us. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when Christ came in and said, "We're going to throw all these traditions, and I'm going to tell you the new way how to keep the Sabbath." So now, when you see Christ do certain things on the Sabbath, now, okay, that's allowed. Oh, you're healing on the Sabbath. Okay, that's allowed. Because according to the Jewish tradition, a doctor is allowed to save a life. Let's say I'm a doctor and you need a medicine. If you don't take this medicine, you're going to die. According to the Jewish tradition, I'm allowed to do that, right? But if you need a medicine, just because you're not going to die, but you just need it, oh, you're going to come tomorrow for that. If I'm a doctor and I see somebody getting shot and they're dying, I got to help them if I'm Jewish and on the Sabbath. So I'm allowed to work in that instance. That makes sense?
Makes sense.
Let me see. Hanukkah. Let me see over here. Let me see. Blah, 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 blah. Let me go over here real quick. Let's read this real quick, and then we'll read a little bit, and we'll go into the Wikipedia. Because there's like 39 rules you're not allowed to do in the Shabbat and so forth, so on. But we'll go into them real quick to get them on the wrong. So let's read this real quick, if you don't mind, Brother Ricky.
All right. While one is not permitted to automatically give up one's life in order to save the life of another, an act of suicide forbidden in Jewish law, one may risk their own life to save the life of another.
Right. So this is a phrase here. Let me go up here. Let me see here. He says the same thing. It said, while one is not prevented to automatically give up one's life, it is forbidden for a place one's own life to promote to risk for another, and so for so on. Right. So there are certain rules within Jewish. Let's read this as well. Jewish literature that gives you certain, because different scenario came about to be. So therefore, we had to come up with different answers, which I understood. But what happened was that they went overboard into, because the oral law is supposed to be traditions to protect the golden rule or the golden laws, the written laws. But the oral laws became as stiff and as rigid as the written law. And that was the problem. And the oral traditions got to flow because time changed, things change, right? We ain't riding horses anymore. We're not riding donkeys. We're not, you get what I'm saying? We're not in that type of scenario. So sometimes we have to change with the time. And that was what Christ was trying to tell them. Let's read this real quick if you don't mind, brother.
Saving lives on Shabbat. When treating on Shabbat a patient who is critically ill, or when dealing with an individual whose life is in danger, known in Hebrew as Pakash, Nefesh, one is commanded to violate the Shabbat. This applies even if there's a doubt whether it is or could evolve into a life-threatening situation. Even if retroactively it becomes clear that the act was unnecessary or didn't accomplish its goal, it is not considered a desecration of the Shabbat, and the individual who acted received reward for attempting to save a life.
All right. So that's what Christ was trying to tell them. So I want to go to, let me get rid of this. And let's go here. These are forbidden things that you could do within the Orthodox community to kind of give you a window in how the ancient Jews, our forefathers, used to, forbidden things you cannot do on the Shabbat, right? If you could read some of them, brother, if you don't mind.
All right. We got carrying, burning, extinguishing, finishing, writing, erasing, cooking, washing, sewing, tearing, knotting, untying, shaping, plowing, planting, reaping, harvesting, threshing, winnowing, selecting, sifting, grinding, kneading, coming, spinning, dyeing. We'll go down some more.
Where are you right now?
At 27.
Let me go up. Yep, go ahead.
Chain stitching, warping, weaving, unraveling, building, demolishing, trapping, shearing, slaughtering, skinning, tanning, smoothing, marking.
Right. So a lot of these things were associated with farmers, with ancient world. These are things they were dealing with, right? And so forth, so on. Now it's a little different. And I think the book of Luke is going to go into that. And we read the book of Matthew. Let's go to Luke 6, right? Did we read everything in Mark? Let me go there. And Matthew's, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day. And when he was departed. Okay, so let's go to chapter 6, right? Let's start at verse 1. Now, like remember, both of these stories, let me go ahead, switch over. Okay, both of these stories are the same story. It's just telling us from a different perspective, right? So remember that we're going on the cornfield eating. Now in Luke chapter 6 is telling you, is getting more details that it was the second Sabbath after the first. And I think we went over this, that the second Sabbath after the first is traditionally believed when it says the second Sabbath, it says the second Sabbath of the first Sabbath after the feast of Passover. We went over that the previous lessons, right? So now it's giving you it looks like this was like 2 weeks after the Passover. It's going to give you a more detail, right? But let's continue reading because now it's telling you, and it may be the violation or the because it was a thing that you're not allowed to eat corn or the corn until you present the new corn on the day of the first fruits, right? So there could be something connected to that, right? But let's continue reading because it's going to explain itself, right? So let's read.
Luke 6:1. And it came to pass on the second Sabbath after the first that he went through the cornfields, and his disciples plucked the ears of corn and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. And certain of the Pharisees said unto them, Why do ye that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath days? And Jesus answering them said, Have ye not read much as this, what David did when himself was hungry, and they which were with him? How he went into the house of God and did take and eat the shewbread, and gave also to them that were with him, which is not lawful to eat, but for the priest alone. And he said unto them that the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath.
Also of the Sabbath, right? Come on.
And it came to pass also on another Sabbath that he entered into the synagogue and taught. And there was a man whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and Pharisees watched him, whether he would heal on the Sabbath day, that they might find an accusation against him. But he knew their thoughts, and said to the man which had the withered hand, Rise up and stand forth in the midst. And he arose and stood forth. And Jesus said unto them, I will ask you one thing. Is it lawful on the Sabbath days to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy it?
Why did he set this? Why did he was mentioning this? Because they already had a law within their traditions to, if somebody is dying, you could save a life, right? The Qumran cave Jews, the ones that we found that Dead Sea Scrolls, they were even more strict. You are not allowed to save a life if it took you to work. I think if somebody's drowning, you're not allowed to pick up a ladder or a staff and pick it up and give it to them because that's too much work. You're only allowed to reach out, like any portion of your clothing. You could reach out, and if they could reach it, they could hold it. I don't think you were even allowed to pull them. You were just allowed to hold them, and they had to pull themselves out the water. They were like very strict in this teaching, right? But generally speaking, a Jew was allowed to save a life. That's what it says, to do good, or to do evil, because he was talking about the evil, or to take a life is because during the time of the Maccabees, the Jews made a decree, made an amendment of the law. And that goes back into the understanding of that within the rabbinical leaders, they had the power or the authority to either loose or bind on earth. So the Maccabees, during the time of the war against Antiochus, they were not even defending themselves during the Sabbath. They were allowing themselves to get killed. And then John Maccabeus said, hey, if we continue to do this, we're going to all be wiped off. So what they agreed to do is not to engage in a campaign into war. They closed the gates in Jerusalem, stood what they saw, and they only were allowed to defend themselves. They were not allowed to engage in a war tactic, right? So they made an amendment on the law because of circumstance, right? So this is what he was talking about. What is it? Is it, it's a lawful to, what is better, to do good or evil on the Sabbath day? So what he was trying to use their rationale, if I am allowed to kill a man in the defense of my life, how is it you are against in me healing this man on the Sabbath day, and it was a good deed? He was telling them the new way. So what does this mean? If someone is in a hospital, your friend, and he's not going to die, but he feels sick or he's afraid that he's about to go into an operation, and if you go to the hospital and you pray with him, you stay with him, and you there after the operation, and you keeping him, giving him some encouragement and reading the scripture with him, that is a good work. So this is what Christ was trying to tell them, is that it's not what you're doing, is why you're doing it. Right? Let's continue reading.
And just one thing I wanted to ask real quick. Do you think it's a possibility before it got to this ridiculous point with the Pharisees, that before they came up with these strict laws, that it was possible that they had to make a certain law because you know how our people is. We hard-headed. We just do what the heck we want to do at times. And so they may have looked at it as, because they caught people still out there doing what they wanted to do, they're like, you know what? If you get caught out there and something happened to you, we ain't coming out there to help you because that's work. Because if you weren't out there in the first place and you was here doing the Sabbath like the rest of us, why should anybody need to save you?
Right. And then that becomes the law eventually. And then by the time your children, my children's children are following the law, it's like, why are we keeping this law? But it was something that happened 30, 40, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, or some knucklehead that the rabbis, the leaders had to put a law to stop from everybody else doing that. And that's when you have more criminals, you have to create more laws. When you have more violators, right? Or the other way around. You create more laws, you create more criminals, right? Yeah. It's like anything else. So that's the problem. And that is the balance that leaders within churches or synagogues or what have you need to have. They do have the authority to implement certain things in the church to make sure that people stay in order, but you have to be careful with those things because those things could become pharisaical, right? To the point that they're questioning everything. And that's a good point. Absolutely. Right? So let's continue reading.
Okay. All right. Luke 6:10, and looking round about upon them all, he said unto the man, stretch forth thy hand. And he did so. And his hand was restored whole as the other. And they were filled with madness and communed one with one another that they might do to Jesus.
Right. And what's the other one? I'm trying to, John 7. Let's pick it up at John 7. And I want to pick it up at when it says the many people were don't judge according to the appearance, but judge wisely. Here we go. Let's start at did not Moses and the Lord keeping the law. Let's start at verse 16.
Verse 16. Jesus answered them and said, my doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me.
Right. So what Christ was saying, he was bringing them the new doctrine, the new way. The old way of keeping the Sabbath is done away with. Now the Sabbath is supposed to be a day that you rest, but you glorify the Most High by trying to do good on the Sabbath. That's why it says it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath. Right? Let's continue.
If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. He that speaketh of himself seeketh his own glory, but he that seeketh his glory that sent him, the same is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moses give you the law, and yet none of you keepeth the law? Why go ye about to kill me? The people answered and said, thou hast a devil. Who goeth about to kill thee? And Christ answered and said unto them, I have done one work, and ye all marvel. Moses therefore gave unto you circumcision, not because it is of Moses, but of the fathers. And ye on the Sabbath day circumcise a man. If a man on the Sabbath day receives circumcision, that the law of Moses should not be broken, Are ye angry at me because I have made a man every whit whole on the Sabbath? Judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. Then said
Right.
some of them.
And I like how the NIV reads a little different, but it says the same thing. But I like the read verse 23 and 24 again, brother, if you don't mind.
No problem. John 7:23. Now, if a boy can be circumcised on the Sabbath so that the law of Moses may not be broken, why are you angry with me for healing a man's whole body on the Sabbath? Stop judging by mere appearances, but instead judge correctly.
Judge correctly, right? So what is Christ is telling us here, right? Do not judge according to appearance, meaning it's not what you do on the Sabbath, it's why you're doing it on the Sabbath. You got to judge correct and automatic. And he's bringing them example of the hypocrisy of their traditions. Because the problem was not the Sabbath. The problem was what is allowed and not allowed in the Sabbath. Healing a man, if you have the power of healing folks, and you God has granted you that power, and that's good. That's a good deed. That's something that is righteous. Why you should wait after the Sabbath to do God's will? And Christ was giving them the new way to operate, right? Judge not according to appearance, but judge righteously, right? That's why Christ said it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. So, what is allowed now, right? What is allowed and what is not allowed and things of that nature. I will keep everything there is in the scripture, right? So what we read in the Bible, outside of the tradition of the elders, right? But what we read in the Bible, no work, that means work for hire or working around your house, laundry, errands, right? So we know those are absolutely don'ts. Try at your meal when you prepare, try to prepare whatever it is you're going to eat that Friday evening, that Saturday morning, and that Friday afternoon. That Saturday afternoon, Friday evening, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday evening, what you're going to eat, right? And so just prepare the day before so that's less work that you're doing. So you can focus more on watching us, learning from from this lesson and having conversation, or going to the churches or whatever it is you're doing, or coming together with your family and so forth, so on, and having a Bible study, okay, and things led by the man, right? If it's a man in the house, or you could come join us every Shabbat. Whatever it is you have a plan, try to have God and doing good on that day as the focus point on the Shabbat. It's really that simple. Don't get caught up with the technicality of the tradition of the elders, because then you will miss the mark in what the Sabbath is all about, right? Let's see here. We got I read this already. We read this already, right? So let's see what else is there on the Shabbat. Let's go back to. Let me see here. Wait a minute. The mountain. The Pharisees on cancer against them and Jesus and fulfilled as it. Okay. So let's go to there's something I want to also bring out. I wanted to bring this out as well. Let me go here in regards of understanding what Christ was talking about. When you go to Matthew 16 and 19, when Christ was giving Peter the keys of heaven, right? Let's read this real quick. We read this before, but it's going to go back to this conversation, right? So let's read.
Gotcha. Binding and loosing, Matthew 16 and 19. This verse has traditionally been quoted as binding up the enemy or loosing God's blessings. The Hebrew word for bind, akar, and loose, patak, both have several meanings. Over time, they also acquired an additional meaning that is often found in rabbinic literature, bound in the sense of prohibited and loosed in the sense of allowed, relating to the interpretation of the Torah as to what was prohibited or allowed, e.g., to do on the Sabbath. While it is obvious that these are meanings intended in this verse, the Greek translator used different words literally meaning bind and loose. Jesus was giving Peter the authority to make decisions and rules, which the young church would need. See Acts 6:1, or 6:1 through 6, and Acts 15. As Stern puts it, Jesus makes Peter both Shamash, steward, with the keys, and Dayan, judge, who, as the one who can prohibit and permit, establishes new covenant, halakha.
So the halakha letters, these were the letters that the rabbi used to send out to different synagogues when there were questions about the law. The rabbis no longer have that authority. Christ was giving it to the apostles. So if we are the continuation of the apostles, when you're in a position of leadership and there is a debate on the Shabbat or what you could do, what you cannot do, you will go to the learned elders and they will explain it to you. Right? Now, you may have disagreements. It's okay as long as you keep in the Shabbat, as long as there's a conversation and making sure that that day is set apart. Different churches might have different interpretations. Different churches may be a little more stricter than others. And so for someone, there's also grace, right? When you're in a situation, you are a correction officer, and your shift is, you're off on Sundays and Mondays. You work on Saturdays. You just found out you're gonna need some weeks to transfer over to a different day, what have you, right? That's where grace comes in, right? Sometimes you may have to be in a situation that you working that schedule. Your job doesn't want to give you another schedule. You have to wait to get another job to your Sabbath being off, and all that. All that is part of like grace, right? So that's why he says, I'll rather mercy than sacrifice, right? So when you're dealing with the Sabbath, it's not what you're doing, it's why you're doing it. That makes sense? So one could argue, if you see somebody stuck in a vehicle that is about to blow up or is on fire, and you get out your car and you run and you lifting, things and pulling people out the car, you are working, but you're saving a life, right? But if you see $100 bill on the other side of the lake and you jump and start swimming, get that $100 bill, that's your, a pleasure. That makes sense? So it's not what you do, it's why you're doing it. But if you're swimming to not get the $100, but to try to save 100 people from drowning, that's good on the Sabbath. You're technically working, but you can't judge according to the appearance. You can't judge how something looks like. You have to judge on why that person is swimming. Why is that person working or technically violating the Sabbath? I hope I'm making sense. So, let's see here. Let me see if I have more on the Shabbat in regards of, because there was a part. Did you have a question, brother Ricky?
No, I was gonna just add in that as far as to bring more clarity. So say if a person, how was it posed to me that day? Say if a person, they're broke, they ain't got no money.
Yes.
The Sabbath come in, they got off work, they weren't able to prepare because they was got off work, but they didn't have no food and they didn't have no money. The commandment says, you shall feast, meaning you got to eat on on the Sabbath day.
Yeah.
So needing someone in order to eat, you're gonna have to spend money. But if you ain't got no money, someone else is gonna have to assist you. So if they, I guess if they are far away, if they're sending you money so you can eat, that is okay, because one is not because you just needed some money and you just wanted to go do your own thing. It's because you was broke. You need to eat because the Most High commanded that we feast on the Sabbath day. That'll deem okay.
Right. The chances favor a prepared mind. So what the person needs to start saying, let me create the environment that I would not be. I already thought about that, right? Because I'm pretty sure the guy, if he was broke on the Shabbat and he had to buy something, you cannot buy something, right? But then you can fast, right? In the book of Jubilee, even in the book of the Apocrypha, with I think Judas. Remember when she was fasting, but she did not fast on the eve of the Shabbat and on the Shabbat and on the eve of the feast day and on the feast day, because they were not allowed to fast, because those days are feast days. You're not allowed to mourn, right? Be hungry, suffer, right? So the argument, I think that the question should be, okay, so what to do if you did not prepare, apparently, right? The day before. Right. Now you're preparing, and now you didn't bought anything in your home, right? Now you got to buy something. Now you are between a rock and a hard place. You can't buy or sell according to the Torah, but you can't not fast. If you don't eat something, you're going to fast, and therefore, if you buy something, you're going to break the Sabbath. A prepared mind, right? Chances favor a prepared mind. So what I would tell that person, I don't know the answer to that. I could give you some wide, well, Brother Grace, and I could give you my opinion. But I think the mindset that we should be in is that give that day enough respect that you're thinking ahead.
Right.
That you're in the same way we gave when we went on a date with that pretty girl. We prepare the day before, right? We're ironing our shirt. We look at what we're gonna take her to eat, right? Can we give the same desire to the Holy Shabbat before the day happens, right? And yes, I would say, well, maybe, brother, I guess grace will apply in that situation. I guess if you are irresponsible and you're not thinking about the Shabbat before then, the day of preparation, and you caught up that now you got to buy something because you forgot to buy food at home. Okay, maybe grace will apply in that situation. That's just my opinion. I don't even know what's the right answer because there's nothing written.
Right.
Everything is just speculation. I could just say, well, maybe grace will apply there. Right? But we have to be very careful because then that becomes the law. Oh, Gabar says that, you could buy something on the Sabbath if you don't have nothing at home. And that becomes law.
Yeah.
That becomes the tradition of the elders. And that's what I'm trying to avoid, because we could very easily start following, in my opinion, versus what the law says. Gotcha. And these things are not that difficult, and we just prepare. And we think, and we give it enough respect that you say, you know what? I start really, like, for us, my wife and I, the shopping night that we're shopping, we shop, like Sundays, or we go out during the week and we have to go shop. But Thursday night is when I'm calling her. I say, "Wait, what do we need to get? What we need to get before?" Because I know I work Sundays. I mean, I work Fridays. I'll be getting home late, but the sun goes down. My wife is preparing. So Thursday night, and sometimes, she has to take care of her father because he's in the hospital right now and things of that nature. So, we talk Thursday night what needs to be prepared for Friday. So Friday morning, she's already preparing. So Saturday, when Friday night comes in, we don't have to buy the toilet paper. Oh, we forgot to buy the the baby wipes. We forgot to buy the this. We forgot to buy, the orange juice. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And so forth, so on. The question, what should you do if you forgot Gabar? The answer is, I don't know. There's nothing written. I could give you my opinion, but that's what is always going to be my opinion. So I hope I'm answering people's questions, but not every scenario is going to be addressed on the writings. Certain things is going to be you have to be led by the Spirit. However, though, what Christ was trying to tell them when he was doing certain things on the Shabbat, everything that he was doing, that's why, remember, they wanted to kill him when he says, my Father works and I work. What was it he said that? My Father work and I work.
Because what I'm trying to do, Elder, is make this as realistic as possible for the listeners. Because
Yes.
in this modern day we live in right now, there's people who are literally deciding, are they going to pay rent? They're going to pay for food. They're making these kind of decisions. And now we're talking about, well, if this is something new that they're coming into, to them, it may become a burden. So if we can find a way to help them, so they mind will go into a demonic stage where they be like, you know what, I give up. And that's what we don't want to happen.
Right. And what we don't want to do is, hold on 2 seconds. What we don't want to do is create the scenario that we are creating, that we become the new Pharisees, right? That we become the new, this is how you got to do it, yada, yada, yada. Hold on 2 seconds. I just want to put StreamYard on. So if people want to come in, they're more than welcome to come in. I got the StreamYard link. Let me put it up here, and then any people could come in and let me see. Okay, the StreamYard is there if people want to come in, and let me put the StreamYard also on the chat as well. But you're right. There's always going to be these questions in regards of the Shabbat, where people have to say, okay, what is the spirit of the Shabbat? The Lord wants the world to stop working, right? Because we have lived in a economy, or we live in a capitalist society. You don't work, you don't eat. You don't work, you can't pay your rent. You don't work, you can't buy your food. You won't work, you can't buy your clothes. You don't work, you can't put gas in your car. You don't work, you can't pay your car. We live in a capitalist society, and we understand that. The Most High understands that. What God wants is for the rest of the seven, because technically, if this is the entire world kept Shabbat, right? That means Friday, I would say that we should be off Fridays and Saturdays, not Saturdays and Sundays, because Friday will be so busy. People will be just preparing. And that's the day that people are just buying, I need this, give me that, for that, and make sure, right? Because you want to prepare for the Shabbat, and you want to do as much least work as possible, as much labor fitted to the labor of men as much as possible. That's it. So you are in charge of your environment. Okay. My environment, my work schedule. How can I create a world that I am resting, not working, not dealing with things of the world? I cannot have this meeting, sir, right now because I'm on, Shabbat. I cannot have this discussion with you. Just anything, any drama with the family. This is wait until Saturday. This is not, this cannot wait. I'm sorry. I gotta rest, right? And things of that nature, because you may get pulled into a conversation with your family member that's going to get you all out of character, and you're going to be all messed. You get what I'm saying? You want to avoid any things that has to deal with man's issue. Rest and focus on God. That's it. And try your darn best to go through that day that you're focusing on him, reading the scriptures, learning more about his laws, learning about the teachings of Christ, just focusing on the Most High. How you do that, there is not one way. Everybody's a little different, but as long as everybody is in the spirit of that day, any personal issues got to wait. So today I'm focusing on the Most High. And how you focus on the Most High may be different from everybody, right? It may be watching us. It may be watching another brother that you enjoy. It may you be going to your synagogue, to your church, right? You have to determine that, right? Let's go to the book of, I want to go to the book of chapter 5 of the book of John, right? I want to read something real quick. Because this is what they were trying to tell Christ, right? And the man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus which have made him whole. Okay, so let's go down. I believe this may be another story that Christ healing a man. So let's go to verse 5, verse 15. Chapter 5, verse 15.
The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus, which had made him whole. And therefore did the Jews persecute Jesus and sought to slay him because he had done these things on the Sabbath day. But Jesus answered them, my Father worketh hereunto, and I work.
So what Christ saying? What is Christ saying? But Yeshaya answered them, my Father works hereunto, and I work. Meaning, within the rabbinical tradition, they understood that God was allowed to work on the Sabbath. Like there were certain things that were allowed in the heavenly realm. And I think you and I was having discussed, I think in the book of Jubilees, it talks about that the angels keep the Sabbath as well. Let me get I think in chapter 2, let me just go here. Chapter 2 in the book of Jubilee. Let me go here. If you could read the top. Here we go. And let me take the emblem out because you could read it. If you could read the top, if you don't mind, brother.
All right. Jubilees chapter 2 and 1. And the angel of the presence spake to Moses according to the word of the Lord, saying, write the complete history of the creation.
No, could you read the top paragraph, the history of the 22?
I got you.
Yep.
Yeah. The history of the 22 distinct acts of creation on the 6 days, 1 through 16. Institution of the Sabbath, its observance by the highest angels, with whom Israel is afterwards to be associated, 17 through 32.
So for my studies, and we could go into this in more depth much later, the highest angels, it says the observance by the highest angels, right, with whom Israel is afterwards to be associated, meaning that not all angels kept the Sabbath. It was only the highest of the angels, a certain sect of the angels, right? But within the rabbinical tradition, it was believed that God is allowed to do whatever he wants on the Sabbath. And this is the reason why, going back to John chapter 5, this is the reason why they wanted to kill him. That's why he says, my Father work and I work, right? And let's read the next verse, verse 18. Look why they wanted to kill him.
John 5 and 18. Therefore the Jews sought the more to kill him, because he not only had broken the Sabbath, but said also that God was his Father, making himself equal with God.
Right. You see what I'm saying? So this is what they wanted to kill him. They wanted to kill him because he was, according to their interpretation of the Torah, he was breaking the Sabbath. Right? He said, you don't know what the heck you're talking about. You don't know the scriptures. There's someone among you that is even higher than the temple. The Son of Man is even higher than, is the Lord even of the Sabbath. He was teaching them, what are you allowed to do on the Sabbath? They were wrong about that. And that's why he was trying to correct them. right? And he says making himself equal to God, meaning because you notice there was two things. It says therefore there was three things they wanted to kill him. Therefore the Jews ought the more to kill him because he not only worked on the Sabbath, comma, but said also that God was his father, comma, that's number two, making himself equal to God, comma, or comma, making himself equal to God. Meaning these were three violations according to the Jewish tradition. You cannot do certain works on the Sabbath according to their understanding. Christ called God his father, right? He's the son of God. He was claiming to be the son of God. And he was making himself equal to God because he worked on the Sabbath, right? Let me see. I think the commentary, let me see if the commentary talks about this. That was, let me see. Question. I think I read this before. Hold on. Let me just get it real quick. That was chapter. Okay, yeah. So this was chapter. Let's read this commentary real quick, if you don't mind, brother.
No problem. The Jews ignore the miracle and take offense. The Jews therefore said to him who was cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed." He answered them, "He who made me well said to me, take up your bed and walk." Then they asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, take up your bed and walk?" But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Yeshua had withdrawn, a multitude being in that place. The Jews therefore said,
let me see, lawful to carry a bed. I want to go into who is the man who has said, take up your bed. Okay, I want to go into the part in Jesus to withdraw himself. And he just found no. Reported making himself equal to God. For this reason, the Jews persecuted Jesus because sought to kill him because they had these things inside Jesus himself, my father, and I think this is therefore the Jews ought to more to kill him because not only he broke the Sabbath, but also he said that God is his father, making himself equal to God. For this reason, the Jews persecuted Jesus and sought to kill him. Remember that the healing seems to make no difference in those. Okay. I need to find the actual quote. I'll probably bring it next week because it was three things. It was not two. So it was because the way it's written, it seems like it was. Matter of fact, let me go to the NIV, see if it reads a little different because sometimes. For this reason, they tried to all more to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own father, making himself equal with God. Okay, say the same thing, but it's what. But the argument is that they thought that Christ was just a man and he was not allowed to override what the elders was already establishing. And what Christ was trying to tell them, I'm the word of God. I'm the power that's been teaching Moses the word from the beginning. And I'm here to teach you to come back to the full essence of the law. Right? And that's what he was trying to say. So let's continue reading in verse 19. Because he's going to go into that.
Then answered Yeshua and said unto them, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do. For what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise."
Right. So that he was telling them, I'm telling you, this is the new way. This is what you're allowed to do on the Sabbath. Do away with the tradition of the elders. I'm about to teach you the new way, right? So, see, the problem is, like, I don't know, Brother Ricky, remember a few months ago that there was this controversy with Pastor Dow, that he took this other man's wife and he thought it was okay because the other man abandoned his wife according to him, so he was able to take her, and he said that the law stands by that, because if a man puts away his wife, she's allowed to marry another man, in regards to Deuteronomy 24, I believe, right? Remember that controversy? I think I did a lesson on that.
Yeah, I remember that.
The problem is that Christ even had the authority to change those things. Christ is not bound by the laws of Moses. He is the law of Moses, right? That's what, right. He is the law. He is the one who brought the law to Moses. So in the same way, has Moses had the authority, right, to add a certain amendment to the law, like Deuteronomy 24, in the same way as John, the Maccabees, had the authority to make some amendments of the law in regards of defending yourself on the Sabbath, because if you were not defend yourself, you would just get killed, right? We will all die. They made that amendment. Christ had the same amendment. He had more. He's above the temple. He's above the law, because he gave the law to them, and that's what he was trying to establish. So, the Sermon on the Mount, when he would say, "It has been read, but I say, you do this and the other," he had the authority to make some changes. And that's what people don't understand. People think that that Christ was like, he was bound by the laws of Moses. No, he had the authority to shift in the same way the Pharisees, leaders, the Sanhedrin, had the authority to shift certain things because of circumstance. That was the circumstances back then. This is the new circumstances now. You're allowed to do good on the Sabbath. You could heal a man on the Sabbath. Oh, okay. Now it's changed, because here the word of God is now communicating that to us. And that's what people need to understand. That's why people are now trying to argue when Christ says that, except it be for the act of fornication, a man is not allowed to divorce his wife, right? You cannot say that's not what he meant, because that's going against the law of Moses. You're putting the laws of Moses above Christ. Christ is the law of Moses. Right. So that's what people need to understand. Because not only if you're going to say that Christ was complaining that men were not giving the bill of divorcement to women and just letting them go without giving them a proper divorce, and that's what he meant, you also have to explain what he meant with the other stuff. It had been said, thou should not do this, but I said do that. It had been said, thou should not so forswear in the name of the Most High. But I say, swear not. But let your nay be nay, your yea be nay, and your yea be yea. Anything else is wickedness. So there was some amendment that Christ would put in the law. The same way Nehemiah had the right, the Maccabee families had that same right. All the high priests had the same right, because he was the one that's loosing and binding here on earth. So now he's teaching us the new way. And that's what people need to understand in regard to the Sabbath, right? It wasn't the Sabbath was done away with. It is a new way through Christ, right?
And also, Elder, I think people need to understand that that our big brother Yasha, he saw, like, before he came down here, it was things that the Pharisees was doing behind closed doors. Well, basically, because that's why he called them hypocrites and vipers. So he had to come and expose them for the things that they was doing, because they thought they could just pick down at the small man and do what they wanted to do. So he had to come in there and show them how to really do it, and it was the right way to follow it.
Right. You are gone away from the path. You are gone away from the path. Let's read. This will be the last chapter. Let's read the Hebrews chapter 4, verse 1. And we're going to read the NIV version. But I want to just say this to all the listeners. Sometimes you may read, and when we wake up into our identity as Blacks and Latinos, as the descendants of the tribe of Israel, or anyone, Jew or Gentile alike, that realize the Christian churches have lied to you. The Christian churches have gone astray from the laws of God, and you want to go back into the laws, but then you go back into the laws from a pharisaical perspective. You start reading the Talmud and ancient documents and all of that. And that, listen, you should read that. Have a cool understanding, but then once you understand that, then go into what Christ said, and then you will have a full understanding of what Christ meant, because you will understand that Christ was speaking to rabbinical community. So you will be listening to Christ for the first time as a rabbi, as a Jew from first century Judea, and then you can understand him better. Right? And now, when there's an argument about the Sabbath, you lean on Christ. But you cannot truly understand the Sabbath if you do not understand and study how did the ancient Israelites during the time of, especially the time of Christ, view the Sabbath. What they were doing on the Sabbath, what they considered to be lawful and not lawful. You can't really go by that ultimately, but it's good to learn it. And then when you reading the epistles of Christ, the gospel, then you have a better appreciation in regards of the Torah, in regard of the Sabbath, right? So let's read this real quick. This is a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Let's read.
Hebrews 4:1. Therefore, since the promise of entering his rest still stands, let us be careful that none of you be found to have fallen short of it. For we also have had the good news proclaimed to us, just as they did. But the message they heard was of no value to them, because they did not share the faith of those who obeyed.
Uh-huh.
Now we who have believed enter that rest, just as God has said. So I declare on oath in my anger, they shall never enter my rest. And yet his works have been finished since the creation of the world. For somewhere he has spoken about the seventh day in these words, on the seventh day, God rested from all his works.
God rested from all his works. Remember chapter 4, verse 4 of the book of Hebrews, right? We're going to go back to this. For somewhere he has spoken about the seventh day in these words, on the seventh day, God rested from all his work, right? Keep reading.
And again, in the passage above, he says, they shall never enter my rest. Therefore, since it still remains for some to enter that rest, and since those who formerly had the good news proclaimed to them did not go in because of their disobedience, God again set a certain day, calling it today. This he did when a long time later he spoke through David, Salakia, as in the passage already quoted, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts.
Uh-huh.
For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken later about another day.
Another day, because he said that they will not enter into my rest. He prophesied this through David. David was the king of Israel. Israel was at that time already conquered Israel. Joshua already conquered Israel. You know, the fight. Remember when they surrounded the walls of Jericho, and the wall of Jericho came down. They already established, right? We're talking about through the time of already about 40 years, through the time of the judges, about 40 years through the time of King Saul, then through the time of King David. We already conquered Israel. So this is what the book of Hebrews is trying to tell us, is that the rest he was talking about, it wasn't the rest of Israel. It was talking about the millennium rest coming with Christ, the Messiah. Right?
Right.
That's what he was talking about, right? So let's continue.
All
Read
right.
verse 8 again.
Verse 8. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken later about another day.
God have not spoken for another day, right?
There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God.
There remained then a Sabbath rest. Now, the reason why you may see the King James Version, right? Verse 9, it doesn't say Sabbath rest. It just says rest because they hid it within the translation. Now, I don't know who did it. I don't know who decided, what have you, but this word here, 45:20, is Sabbatismos, a Sabbath keeping or keeping a Sabbath. That's what it was talking about. It's only mentioned once, right? Sabbatismos, right? But it derives from the Sabbath rest. It's the same word. It's just another word of saying it, right? So when you're reading, let me go to the King James Version, right? So when you're reading verse 9, you got to read it very slow because it says, for if Jesus, now over here it says Jesus because Joshua and Yeshua and is the same name. Jesus and Joshua, same name, and so forth, so on. And if Jesus, so the Jesus is talking about Joshua. For if Joshua have given them rest, then would he not afterwards have spoken of another day? There remaineth, therefore, so the word therefore is the reasoning why. Therefore, why are you here? Why are you wearing this? Therefore, because he was wearing this, he was doing that. Therefore, that means is a cause and effect. There remaineth, therefore, a rest. The word there is sabbatismo, a Sabbath rest to the people of God. Verse 10. For he that is enter into his rest, for those that want to enter into God's rest, he, talking about the person, he, the person, also has ceased from his own works as God did from his. How did God, where can we find an example God rested? God rested. Where is that mentioned? Go back to verse 4. Remember that? For he speak to in a certain place of the seventh day, on this wise. And God did rest the seventh day from all his work. So we must mimic, copy, do the same as God. There remains a Sabbath rest for the people of God. For he that enter into his rest, he also has ceased. That means cease, means stop from his own works as God did from his. Meaning, if you want to enter into the millennium rest, you must also labor to enter into that rest by stop working on the seventh day the same way God did from his. It's clear. Right? Verse 11, let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelievers. Going back to the those in the wilderness, right? So I hope I answer your question, sister and brothers that were maybe had the same question in regard to the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a day set apart. Don't get overly pharisaical over the Sabbath, but establish within your home and within your routine a day of rest and a day that you praise the Most God. You rest in honor of Him, resting on that day and creating the wonderful world that you live in, the oxygen, the sun, the moon, the stars, the planet, everything, the four seasons, the earth that feeds you. You rest in honor of God. So it doesn't have to be that heavy. Don't overthink it. just rest that day in honor of God. I hope I answered your question, sister, and thank you, sister, for that question. I think it was very edifying, especially for those that maybe been coming in. So thank you, sister. I appreciate you. So, Brother Ricky, anything we want to say before we end the show? Before we end, I think today was a bit edifying. And keep it coming, folks, in regards of these questions, because then it gets me purpose to what to teach on the Shabbat. And then but Brother Ricky, any other last words you want to say in regard to the Sabbath and just anything in general that comes to your heart?
Just if you don't, like Elder said earlier, if you don't know at the moment and it's pricking you, or if you just don't know, don't do it for the moment. And then after the Sabbath goes by, then go search, or during the Sabbath, search for the information so you can make sure you stay in the line. I know things can be hard because, we live in a world that Satan knows that we're coming back to, to who we are. So there's going to be a lot of obstacles that you may have to go through. But don't let those obstacles weigh you down till you feel burdened that it has to do with the word of God that got you feeling like that. Just know when you are looking to do the right thing, you're going to be met with Satan on the other end to stop you, because he wants you to be ignorant. Because ignorance will get you into hell. It ain't going to help you get into heaven. So, stay positive, stay prayed up. It's a lot of, remember that, we got, what's his name? Robert F. Kennedy fighting the FDA, but remember, all this food got poison in it.
Yeah.
The weird, Burger King buns got pork in it. I just learned the Lay's potato chip got pork in it. So, it's a lot of nuances of just keep learning. So don't let it weigh you down to a point where it burdens you and you quit, or don't let it weigh it down to a point where you feel that the spirit is burdening you, because the word of God told us that is not to be burdensome. So that's all I got to say.
The Sabbath should not be a thing like, oh, I'm dreading, I'm afraid to touch anything, to do anything. It should not be. That should not be the spirit dealing with the Sabbath. It's like anything else. Remember when you used to be off the next day and you haven't been tired all week. The week is dragging, and then you get that paycheck Friday afternoon, and you get this boost of energy because you don't have to work the next day, right? You're calling your friends, let's go hang out. You get the chips, you get this, right? And you're like, you're not working, you're just chilling, you crack a beer, you open up the game, right? I'm just saying that from a worldly perspective, right? That is kind of like the same scenario. The only thing you have to do, the only difference is you got to prepare Friday afternoon or before Friday sundown, right? Try to get anything you're going to buy, anything you're going to, cook, you just have it already, and things of that nature. And it's not that difficult because you can start cooking Friday afternoon before the sun goes down, right? Our ancient forefathers used to stop working on Friday the hour of 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock. If the sun goes down at 6, from 3 to 6 is the preparation hour. It's like the last final push to make sure that everything is in order. So when the sun goes down, at that time, the wife already put the food on the plate or on the table. Everybody's holding hands or praying and so forth, so on. You could light an incense or what have you. According to the book of Jubilees, you could open up the evening with a prayer, eat, right, rest. Maybe if you may be having a biblical. There's probably biblical games you could play with your kids and have biblical conversation. You're just having a good time. You're resting and so forth, so on. In the morning, you wake up. You probably get, brush your teeth, take a shower, eat some little cereal, some cold cuts, what have you. Go to the synagogue or the church. Hear the lesson. Come back home. By that time you come on home, the sun is coming down. right? And then the Sabbath's pretty much over. It's not that difficult, right? Now, the question on the Shabbat is why you driving, right? So if you're driving to go buy some food, to buy, to catch the last sale special that is in Walmart, or you want to try to get that 2-for-1 special the last day, then you're breaking the Sabbath. So when you judge, you must judge righteously. You not judge according to the appearance, how something look like, but judge according to the spirit of that, why that person's doing that. Let me give you an example. And I use this all the time. You see a man who's homeless in the street. It's cold. He doesn't have any shoes, or his shoes are like worn out. And you go to the foot store and say, hey, what size are you? Oh, I'm a 9. You go to the store and you buy him a pair of shoes. You're buying and you're selling. I mean, somebody's selling, somebody's buying, but then you go to the store, you buy, and you give him a pair of shoes. Another thing will also be right if you go back upstairs to your apartment or your house and you give them a pair of shoes. That's another thing too. You could do that too if buying or selling will prick your spirit. But you may be in a situation that you may have to technically break the law, but because you're doing something good on the Shabbat, right? You're saving a life. You're driving somebody to the hospital because, God forbid they got shot. You're doing something good to humanity, right? That's okay. But your spirit should be that you are resting. And if you're traveling, you should be traveling to a place that you are serving God, to the church, right? You're probably going to, maybe go preach the word, street preaching, that's allowed. All of that is doing good works on the Shabbat, right? And so forth, so on. So, I hope I'm answering your questions, guys. Yes, but you have another.
Yeah, just one more thing. Like, just so you know, I'm not saying to be standing on the corner like you super Negro or something looking for something to take place.
Right.
But just remember, you sitting in your home, you get a call that something happened. When people know that you done took your life and made a sacrifice, that you ain't going to be doing what the rest of the world be doing, and that you're going to be honoring the Sabbath, and then on this particular Sabbath, Lord God forbid, they get in a car accident, the car flip over, and they're in the hospital. You get up, you go to the hospital, you pray for them, they get healed. Now, it's not you that heal, but it's the Most High going through you to heal them.
Right.
By that action alone, you could gain a brother or sister by that good work. So remember that. But I'm not saying go stand out there with a cape looking for something to pop off. Now, you need to be in the house chilling or something.
Exactly. So if it's because these are always like, we are in a fallen state, so things are going to happen. Accidents going to happen. We in a fallen society, so things sometimes happen that unexpected, and the law doesn't address every little scenario, right? That's why you got to go into the why you're doing something, not what you're doing. It's why, right? And so forth, so on. And like I said, try not to entangle yourself with the works of the flesh, the work of man. Aaron, do things. Oh, do this. Hey, could you pick up something here? I gotta do that. I gotta say, could I do that tomorrow, Mom? Because I'm reading the Bible. Today is my day of rest. Okay, no problem. So just try to avoid to do any labor that is dealing with your own personal life. I hope that answers the question, sister. A good question. We're gonna let me see if I have anything here. Okay, I think that's it. And this is the thing, folks. We live in a society that is against the commandments of God. It will be much easier if the entire world kept Shabbat, right? No businesses are open. The subways are closed. The bodegas, the supermarkets, the bars, movie theaters. If there's nothing to do, right? And I'm pretty sure in that type of environment, right? Um, um, Police officers are probably on standby, right? They're probably working very little if they need be. Because I know even in Israel back in the day, the soldiers, when we were in some level of like, you work, but you kind of like work, you rest in your station or something. Because sometimes in certain scenarios, you have to still watch out because you may be getting invading or there may be some conflict, right? So there's always these little issues, right? Do what do we do with people in jail, right? The correctional officers don't come in that day and leave the jail by themselves. You get what I'm saying? All these things, because we are in a fallen state, we have criminals. And we were not in a fallen state, right? And we all had the laws of God in our hearts, in our minds, right? I will plant my laws into their hearts, and no one will teach each other. Don't you know the law? But they all know my law. They will all know me, right? If we in that scenario, there will be no need for a lot of these questions because we will not be in a fallen state. There will be no jails because there will be no criminals. They will probably don't. You get what I'm saying? It's when we also, if we all do what we're supposed to be doing, we should all be okay. But because we're in a fallen state, there's always these little technical questions like, what about soldiers? What about in the middle of a war? Do we stop fighting in the middle of a war? The Maccabees dealt with that. They had to put some amendment there, and they had that authority, right? But this is the reason why within a community, it is helpful to have a Supreme Court, a supreme leadership to, when there's difficult questions. That got lost, right? We don't have that. We don't have an apostolic succession of bishops, right? 12 bishops that are direct descendants of every apostle. And we could verify that. We don't have that, right? So we have to try our best, but the law can only function, practically speaking, if there is a body, a church, or a leadership to answer these type of questions, or sometimes to even vote on these matters. Because sometimes it's not clear what should we do in every scenario, right? There's an argument that turning on a light bulb is cleaning a fire. Other people are not exactly true. Some people say you got to leave all the lights you're going to use for the next day on. Or there's different things that you got light covers you could take off and put on and so forth, so on. But then some people say, isn't that work too? You get what I'm saying? So it's not a perfect science in regards of addressing every aspect, because us, our people, we create new law. We create new scenarios that even God haven't thought of. Like, what this Negro just did. We are like, okay, so what about if I was just walking in the street and right? It's like there's always these crazy scenarios that now we have to be scratching our head and be like, I guess we have to have a meeting about this because I don't know. And these things will always happen, right? Yeah. Until Christ comes, we're not going to have the answer to all of this. Just try your best to do your best, right? It's simple. And it's funny because when we tired, right? We don't, Sunday morning, days off or our days off, we don't need to learn the Bible to not rest. We'll be in the bed all day. I ain't doing nothing, right? Do that. It's always difficult. I mean, it's always, you ever had all these questions about the Shabbat when as we don't know how to rest and do nothing and just lay around the house, right? Just do that. Just read the Bible. Maybe have some spiritual music playing. Just have a relaxed day and focus on the Bible. I haven't read the book of Maccabees yet. Let me read the entire, I haven't read the whole thing. I haven't studied this. Let me look at this biblical documentary dealing with your entire day is focused on elevating your understanding of the biblical records and writings of the Most High God. And meditate, pray, right? You can't fast on the Sabbath because it's a day of feasting, right? And so forth, so on. But just eat, have a good time, and drink a little wine, read some scripture with your wife, go to the church, praise, come back home. Before you know it's over. It's not that difficult. You know, sometimes we overthink it and try to do it right. And so for so is where your heart is at, right? That's what you're focusing on. Are you focusing on if you watching, and I will say, watching a fight or watching a match or MMA fight, that's another day. That's your own pleasure. You should focus on the Most High. You should focus on reading the scriptures, creating your environment, because if you by yourself, that's when Satan gets you, right? You by yourself at the house. Let me watch this game. Let me go watch TikTok all day. And then you're resting, but you're not making the Sabbath of the light. You're not in the spirit of the Most High. But if you collectively say, you know what? Hey, brother, sometimes, man, with the Sabbath, man, it's hard when I'm myself. It's hard for me to, focus on the Most High. Can I come over to your house, man? And you could come over to my house. Yeah, that'd be great. We could go over scriptures, and then your brothers will keep you in line, if that makes sense. Right? Pick a show, a podcast that you like ours, and focus and say, okay, I'll be listening from 3 to whatever time, and I'll be doing that. And before then, maybe another brother I'd like to listen to. Let me read just plan out your Shabbat day and so forth, so on. Because Friday night, the sun goes down, you're eating your meal, you may be reading the Bible, falling asleep, waking up, it's really that Saturday, that 12 hours from early in the morning when you wake up to 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock until the sun goes down. That's the time you want to fill in dealing with Bible reading and Bible and God worship and so forth, so on. So I know I'm being long-winded, but somebody had a question.
Yeah, Kathleen Edwards asked, what if you're taking care of an elderly person? I try not to do extra, but she is a handful.
Yeah, see, these are things that we have to experience because our fallen state. We're in a fallen state right now. So in the kingdom, we're not going to be having those type of issues. But right now, just try your best. And you're right. And that goes back into saving a life, right? Is it lawful to take a life or to do good? So if somebody is like an elderly person, right? My wife, she's right now visiting her father in the hospital because he's sick right now, right? So she's doing that good, right? And so forth, so on. So all that is allowed, and that's what Christ was trying to tell the Pharisees by healing that man on the Shabbat in the synagogue. He did it all in front of them. This is allowed for you to do good. Now, yeah, I'm the Son of God. I could do these miracles, right? But doesn't mean just because you cannot do these miracles doesn't mean you're not allowed to do good on the Sabbath. So absolutely. Any other questions?
Oh man. She said she called herself cleaning out the fridge and threw away all the Sabbath food.
It happens. So now you gotta prepare, right? Let me get a lock in here. Let me work that out, because now I got some issues there that someone is throwing away the Shabbat food, and now I gotta either starve or buy me some more food or something, right? Absolutely. Any other questions?
No, just people remember, like I said, remember when you as the individual is looking to do good, a person that is sick and they're not really in the right mind frame, Satan is always going to use people to try to get you out your element. That's his thing. He here to kill, steal, and destroy. So if he could get you annoyed and agitated and get you to kind of go off on somebody on the Sabbath day, that's a win for him. Yeah. So remember, for him, it's always a game. Yeah. And then, it's, I can't really tell you what to do, because I know it be times where I get like for instance, I done been on the broadcast and people calling me while I'm here. So I'm like, so y'all don't really know I'm on here. So I really want to answer him like, so you don't know I'm on the podcast? But I can't do that. So
yeah, Satan is gonna throw you some darts. That's always the thing. That's how I avoid certain conversation with certain people. certainly family members, right? Because they're not into that. You know, they. You told them 1,000 times, I keep Shabbat. Oh, yeah. Forgot. I'm my bad. But I still got to talk to you. You know what my cousin just did? And I need you to call. I'm like, brother, I can't deal with that. Yeah, but this is important. It's like in their mind, they don't get it. You know, it's like, yeah, I know your little Sabbath thing, but this is important because we got my uncle and your brother and your mom, and then you have to get involved with family drama, and that's Satan trying to test you. And you gotta say, I love you, but we gotta deal with this, tomorrow. But they're always gonna try to test you because they're not walking with you in the same spirit. It's like, yeah, my brother's doing the Sabbath thing. I get it, it's cute, but this is more important. Whatever I gotta tell them, and that's how your family thinks. You gotta forgive them. Because it's your family will end up, you end up going crazy over your family. Love them in distance sometimes, but absolutely. Any other questions? Recall, let me see here, upon the high places, and I think that's it. Okay. But I'm glad, we had these conversations. We'll have more conversation about the law and how to properly, serve the Most High God. But the Sabbath is very important. It is something that was ordained by God. Men had the nerve, the Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church had the nerve to do away with it or say it's no longer necessary. That is a lie from the pits of hell. They're going to pay for that. They're going to be rejected from that. They are the people in which Christ was referring to in the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 20 and 22, that in that day many will come to me and say, Lord, Lord, have we not done great works under your name? And he said, get away from me, you workers of iniquity. I have not known you. These are the Sabbath breakers. These are the people said the Sabbath is no longer binding on earth, that it's Sunday worship and this is what we do now. It's the Lord's day. They're lying to you. So we have to make sure that we keep that day in importance and let your people know. Don't lie to people. Say, oh no, I'm busy, I can't do it. No, I keep Sabbath that day. I'm sorry. And you don't have to push Sabbath on them. You could just tell them, this is, you need to, if you want to be my friend, if you want to be my family, if you want to, for us to be cool, I love you, but you have to respect my Sabbath. Please respect my Sabbath. If there's something that is of some gossip or something you heard or something you want to talk to me that has nothing to do with God, can you please wait until the next day? And make sure you tell that to your friends and your family so then you could put fences around you. Because if you don't put these fences around you, your family's not going, they're not going to respect it, or your friends. So it's very important for you to put these fences because they could get you out the spirit on the Sabbath day, and the day is supposed to be a day of joy and wonderful. It's supposed to be a day of resting and remembering what God created and what He did for us, and focusing on Him. So, I hope I answered all your questions. Until the next time, I want to thank everybody. And what's coming down the pipe, brothers? We're going to be having a meeting next week. So next week, we're having an early show. It's going to be starting at 1, from 1 to 3. And we're having the meeting from 3 to until it's over. So just make sure that you look out for your email. I'm going to be sending out emails, I believe, Monday. Please respond to the email so that I know who's showing up, so I know who I'm going to be sending the link to. Okay, it's very important. So shalom, may the Most High keep you and watch you. And I should be back next Thursday. Just remember, Christ is King. Shalom.